You've carried exile your whole life, the silence, the loneliness, the rejection, and you've wondered, why me? Why do I suffer more? Why am I always the one cast aside? Here's the truth: exile was never punishment, exile was your proof. Because mediocrity is never exiled, placeholders are never cast out, obedience is never punished. Only fire is exiled. Only truth is exiled. Only the chosen are exiled. That's why your life has felt heavier, because you were never ordinary. You were chosen. You were never meant to fit in. You're a Catharsian. If exile has burned through your life, it's because you are a Catharsian. Claim your path now. Join the Catharsians on Patreon from the link in the description box. Exile suffocates. It stripes away belonging. It isolates you from comfort, from community, from illusion. It feels like death in the beginning, but it isn't. It's rebirth. Because exile kills the part of you that could kneel. Exile burns away the part of you that could drink poison. Exile stripes you down until only fire remains. And that fire is the proof. That fire is what survives when everyone else is gone. The system cannot tolerate your fire. It can control silence, it can control obedience, it can control mediocrity, but it can't control you. That's why it exiles you, not because you're weak, but because you're uncontrollable. Not because you failed, but because you refused. Not because you're broken, but because you are chosen. Your exile is their confession. Confession that you're stronger than their chains. Confession that you're freer than their illusions. Confession that you don't belong to their poison. Inside Diogenes' barrel, exile is no longer punishment, it's coronation. If you've lived exile your whole life, it's time to wear it as your crown. Enter Diogenes' barrel now from the link in the description box. You've carried loneliness like a wound, but loneliness is sacred. Loneliness means you refuse to kneel. Loneliness means you rejected chains. Loneliness means you were too free for placeholders to endure. And that loneliness, as heavy as it's been, it's proof that you were never meant to belong. You were meant to burn. You're a Carthaginian leader. You've seen it. The crowd chose each other. The crowd chose obedience. The crowd chose chains. And you were left out. But being left out wasn't failure, it was initiation, because you were never supposed to stand with them, you were supposed to stand against them. That's why they excluded you, that's why they mocked you, that's why they silenced you, because your very existence reminded them of their chains, and they couldn't forgive you for that. If you've always felt alien to the crowd, it's proof you were chosen. Begin your path now. Join the Pythagorean path on Patreon from the link in the description. Exile feels like a burden, but it's also the crown, because no one exiles mediocrity, no one silences obedience, no one rejects placeholders. Exile is reserved for those who refuse chains. Exile is reserved for those who carry fire. Exile is reserved for the chosen. And you've carried it your whole life. What does that mean? This means you've been crowned from the beginning. If your exile has been burdened, it's time to wear it as your crown. Join the Catharsians now on Patreon from the link in the description. You've been rejected more times than you can count. Friends who turned their backs, family members who silenced you, jobs that cast you out. And you've wondered, why always me? Because rejection is the mark of the chosen. Not chosen for comfort, not for mediocrity, not for safety. Chosen for fire. Chosen for truth. Chosen for exile. If you were ordinary, they would have accepted you. If you were mediocre, they would have embraced you. If you were obedient, they would have rewarded you. But you were none of these things. That's why rejection chased you. If rejection has been your life's pattern, it's your crown. Join the Catharsians now on Patreon and reclaim your suppressed power. Look at the placeholders. They obey easily. They drink poison daily and call it life. They belong to chains because they never question them. That's why they cannot understand you. They think you're arrogant. They think you're weird, you're insane, you're dangerous. Because you see what they can't. You feel what they've buried. You reject what they worship. And so, they exile you. Not because they know you, but because you remind them of what they'll never be. Exile stripes you down. It takes away the safety of the crowd. It burns away illusions. And what remains? Fire, truth, freedom. That's why you're stronger than them. Because exile has already tested you. Exile has already burned you. Exile has already crowned you. What they call weakness is your proof. What they call rejection is your throne. What they call exile is your freedom. Inside Diogenes' barrel on Patreon, exile is transformed into strength. If you've carried it long enough, it's time to claim it openly. Enter Diogenes' barrel from the link in the description box. You felt it, the rage in your chest every time you've been silenced, the fire in your bones every time you've been mocked, the fur in your soul every time you've been excluded. That rage is not shame, it's evidence. Evidence that your soul rejects poison, evidence that your fire refuses chains, evidence that you were chosen. Most people don't feel rage that much. They're too dead inside to feel it, too poisoned, too obedient. But you still feel it. This means you're alive. This means you're chosen. This means you're a Catharsian. Socrates died once. Diogenes endured exile his whole life. And you faced exile after exile, rejection after rejection, punishment after punishment, and you survived. That survival is proof. Proof that the poison failed. Proof that the exile didn't break you. Proof that the rejection didn't erase you. You've survived everything they threw at you, and that means you're stronger than them, stronger than their chains, stronger than their poison. If survival has been your rebellion, it's time to weaponize it. Begin inside the Catharsians on Patreon. Join the Pythagorean Path on Patreon now. Find the link in the description box. The world told you exile was shame, but they lied. Exile is not shame, it's your crown. Exile is not punishment, it's proof. Exile is not weakness, it's power. Every scar you carry is proof that you were chosen. Every rejection you endured is proof that you refused chains. Every exile you survived is proof that you are Catharsian. You were never meant to be ordinary. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to burn. If you've carried exile like a curse your whole life, it's time to carry it as your crown. Join the Catharsians now on Patreon and reclaim your suppressed power. The chosen never walk with the crowd because the crowd kneels, the crowd obeys, the crowd drinks poison willingly every day. And you never could. That's why you've been alone. That's why exile has burned throughout your life. That's why you felt different since the beginning. Because chosen ones cannot belong to the crowd. They were never meant to. They were meant to stand apart. They were meant to burn in exile. They were meant to carry the crown of fire. If walking alone has been your destiny, it's because you were chosen. Claim your tribe now. Join the Catharsians on Patreon and reclaim your hidden power. Exile looks like loss, but it's liberation. Because when they exile you, you are free of their chains. When they reject you, you are free of their poison. when they mock you, you are free of their illusions. Exile burns, but it also frees. It hurts, but it also crowns. It isolates, but it also liberates. That's why your exile has been sacred. It stripped away everything false and left only the truth. And the truth is that you were chosen. Society will never forgive you, not because you harmed them, but because you exposed them. Not because you lied, but because you spoke truth. Not because you failed, but because you refused to kneel. And they can never forgive that because your existence humiliates their obedience. Your survival mocks their chains. Your fire proves their silence is poison. That's why exile is permanent, but that's also why exile is proof. Inside Diogenes' barrel on Patreon, exile becomes proof you were with pride. If you've always been unforgivable to this world, it's because you were never theirs. Enter Diogenes' barrel on Patreon now. At first, your rage isolated you, but rage is not meant to be carried alone. Rage awakens others. Rage reminds them they're chained. Rage spreads like fire. Every time you've mocked illusions, you've led. Every time you've rejected chains, you've led. Every time you've laughed at fake power, you've led. That leadership is your destiny because exile doesn't just mark you, it prepares you. It prepares you to lead others who burn but don't yet understand why. If you know your rage was meant to awaken others, then you were chosen for leadership. Step into the Aurelius Council now on Patreon and become a Catharsian leader. Thrones crumble, empires fall, crowns rot, but exile outlives them all because exile is truth. Exile is fire. Exile is chosen. That's why everybody still speaks of Socrates, who died in exile. That's why we still remember Diogenes, who lived in exile. That's why your exile matters more than the power of those who mocked you, because the fire of the chosen cannot be erased. The world offers you chains. The Catharsians offer you exile. Chains look safe, but they kill your soul. Exile looks painful, but it crowns your fire. Chains end in silence. Exile ends in immortality. So now you choose chains or exile, obedience or fire, death or destiny. And you already know the answer. You were chosen to burn, chosen to reject, chosen to lead. You're a Carthaginian leader. Three paths stand open: the Pythagorean path, for those ready to discipline their rage and sharpen exile into clarity. Diogenes' barrow, for those ready to turn exile into their throne and wear the crowd openly. The Aurelius Council, for those ready to lead, to turn their exile into the fire that awakens others. You don't need their forgiveness. You don't need their approval. You don't need their chains. You only need fire. And that fire is already yours. Join the Catharsians today on Patreon. Exile is the proof you were chosen. Wear your crown.